welcome to the Aces Up Your Sleeve podcast. I'm Cade,
I'm Sabrina.
and we're here today to talk about all things neurodivergent entrepreneurship. As our usual disclaimer goes, this is not therapy or therapeutic advice. It's what we might do if we were in your position and our thoughts on the situation. Although we are both therapists and our guest today is also a therapist, we're joined today by Patrick Casale. If you've caught other episodes, you'll know we've mentioned him before, especially when we're discussing autistic community building. But for a more formal introduction, Patrick is definitely an entrepreneur himself. He's a TEDx speaker, an author, a therapist, a podcast host over on All Things Private Practice, and on the Divergent Conversations podcast with his co-host Megan Anna Neff. He's a business coach, group practice owner, and he's hosted retreats all over the world. He's the owner of All Things Private Practice and Resilient Mind Counseling over in North Carolina. He's also AuDHD and twice exceptional, or 2E, as well as a licensed mental health counselor. He's currently working on writing a book about his own lived experiences too. We're glad to have you here with us today, Patrick.
Thank you.
Multi hyphenate.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate it. I despise hearing my bio being read, but I know we're going to talk about burnout, so it's probably good that all of those things were listed.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. And as the person who forced me to write a better bio, which is still not great, but better than the one you laughed me out of the room with, I think of it as payback.
You know, the thing is about your really bad bio is that it was a really bad bio, but it didn't get you laughed out of the room. Like, you've been in the room. You know what I mean? Regardless of the shit bio.
Fair enough. All right, we're going to jump into our first question. We are, like Patrick said, talking about burnout and entrepreneurship burnout. And if you follow Patrick, which is not super unlikely because he's pretty popular for very good reason in our opinions, he's been talking about burnout. So hopefully he will have some good insights here. Someone said, I need advice about my current job situation. I don't have a degree and the job market is bad here. And I absolutely hate my boss and he hates me, which is the worst situation to be in. There's no one I can work under instead either. How can I find other income so I can stop working here or cut my hours? My autism says to stay in the safe job, even though it's crushing me, but my ADHD says hobbies could be good income earning ideas, except that I might crush my joy for my hobbies. What do I do next? So this is like burnout within the job that you're already in kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a tough one, especially if you're saying, like, all right, I don't have the education or the experience to go elsewhere, so what can I really be doing? And that's why I do think pursuing something related to hobbies and special interests can be really useful and transformative potentially, because you never know where that joy and interest-based nervous system is going to take you, whether it be entrepreneurial wise, side hustle, hobby, starting an Etsy shop, like doing something related to the joy that it brings you. Because if you're feeling so crushed and miserable in your situation and it feels uncontrollable at this point in time, one way that you can change that is to take back a little bit about that control and focus that energy where it feels really joy filled. Because otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah. And when it's joy filled, it's going to be less effortful to like keep up and maintain, at least at the beginning, especially for ADHDers, right? So that hopefully would be even something that like it has a higher chance of working out because you're going to be putting a lot of time and effort into it by the way that ADHD works.
Yeah, for sure.
And I know some people like a really clean break where they go, okay, I'm quitting this job to go do this endeavor. Other people kind of like on the weekends I do this exciting new thing. So I'm hearing in the question that the job market is tough, which, yeah, I agree everywhere. There's some data right now that's pretty scary, especially in America, about low job turnover, low hiring, low everything. So I wonder if this might be a situation where it's kind of a both answer, where you start on the weekends or after work working towards something new that involves your hobbies, which also may not crush your joy for them if it's only a part-time thing at first, and you ease your way out of that other job.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of us impulsively often want to jump in head first and just quit the job, burn it all down, don't give the notice. But in reality, the job market is pretty terrible right now. And I think it's good to protect yourself while also protecting yourself energetically by setting those boundaries and saying, like, I'm going to start doing things that I love on the weekends or in the evening time and see where it takes you. Yeah.
And even the daydreaming, right? Like, that can be fun too, even if you're like, "I can't take the steps yet, but I can start daydreaming about it."
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm a big fan also of like really working hard to reframe that your job is there to make you some money. And then you can go out and like live your life. It sounds really corny, but that like work-life balance thing, especially if you don't have a passion-based industry. We're all therapists, which is a little bit of a passion-based industry. It doesn't pay enough not to be. And so there's a little bit of like, okay, I want this to feel really fulfilling because that's kind of why I got into this. But for a lot of industries, it's like, no, don't let your job be every single thing. Clock in, do the work that's expected of you, clock out. And that can, I think, for a lot of like AuDHDers feel really weird. Like I talk to so many who are like, I'm either 0 or I'm 100. Either I care about it with every cell in my body or I don't care at all and I can't find the middle ground. But I think if you can put effort into finding that middle ground a little bit and say like, maybe like I really don't care about this job anymore. Like I don't really, care if it does super well or whatever, but I care enough about making my paycheck. And so I'm going to do the things that are expected of me. And then I'm going to leave. I'm going to go have all the fun that that paycheck affords me in my regular life. And that's like where the balance comes in.
And if you've got hobbies that you're like, I don't even know where I would begin with turning that into something profitable, I would almost encourage folks to check out maybe a subreddit or Facebook group or some sort of social networking area that hones in on that specific hobby or similar hobbies and see if anyone else is talking about how they're spinning it off into full-time work, part-time work. I know for therapists, like we have it a little bit easier because there are so many good resources. You could find podcast books. Patrick's other podcast is one where they teach here's what we've done and here's what's out there for options to switch into private practice or group practice. But for other hobbies, if you're a crocheter, it might help to go and look at some crochet spaces and see, are people making money? Are they doing commissions? How are they doing this?
Hmm.
And to take that a little bit further, like once you find that community for the hobby or interest, it's very likely that you can find a YouTube video or collection of videos on how to set up the e-commerce side or the back end side of your business, whether it be setting up like a Shopify or Etsy or getting a podcast. Like there's so many ways that you can learn things that are not readily available or accessible right in front of your face all the time. Just thinking outside the box from that perspective. So lots of ways to kind of retrain and gain some experience that way as well.
Yeah. And I know that's actually one of the big things, like in general, that idea of like finding community that are already doing the things. Like, I can't tell you how many therapist Facebook groups are therapists' additional streams of income, or, like, and even when it comes to just private practice or group practice, is like, here's a group of people who you can ask questions to who are in your shoes or have been there before and are doing similar things to just go and ask questions to. And that kind of thing I think can be really invaluable because it's one thing to like read a big Reddit post, but it's another to kind of feel more like you're talking to someone directly and like be able to ask your specific question and get your specific question answered. There's a lot of validation that happens in those spaces. And so like I know that that is something that, like Kate was saying, like your podcast, Patrick does, and the Facebook group that will not be named, um, that's dead, but that like there's a lot of ways in which people do build these communities,
Yeah.
and I think the more that you can invest into those communities, they will invest back into you.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And if you're out there looking and you don't find anything, and you're someone who likes to be on camera or recorded auditorially, maybe that's a space where you could be like, all right, so anybody else who has these hobbies, I'm going to start putting out videos on how I'm trying to market and monetize and see what it's like. And that might be the way that you start to bring in a little bit of views, a little bit of followers, maybe some people purchasing what you're creating. Yeah.
Yeah, fill up the niche.
Yeah.
That's a tough one though when you're stuck with a boss that maybe doesn't mesh with you or is outright mean to you and you're kind of daydreaming about this alternate income life, whatever. That's hard.
I do also think sometimes it can be one of those like the more unhappy with the work you are, the more it feels like your boss is mad at you, the more you get mad at the boss. Like there
Yeah.
can be some cycles, and that's not to say that your boss isn't shitty. But that like I always think about like my stepmother, who I hated. She would breathe and I would get annoyed. Like, why do you have to be like taking in any of the oxygen in the space and then you're converting it and you're pumping back out? Fucking stop it. Like, ew, gross. And so like I think of that where it's like, oh, I don't actually care if she's breathing. I just really despise her and I'm in a really, really crappy situation. And so everything she does is an extra level of crappy. And so if you can find ways to like again, de-invest in the idea of the job and just, I'm here to just get my paycheck and do my things, I do wonder how much it will even feel a little better for you and your boss. It might not, but it might.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, our next one is about excitement disappearing. So, I've been working alongside my friends for a while now, but I think my excitement for the project is disappearing the further we get. I have a horrible time finishing projects, and now it's sort of ruining the friendships too. I know I need to back out before they flip out on me, but how do I say it? I know if I leave, I won't get as much time with my friends because they're all so busy all the time with our business. How do I give the project another chance? Or how do I get more excited again? Do I back out and give up on yet another thing?
I think forcing excitement is hard. I think we want to force creativity and excitement and often try to put ourselves in different positions and situations to jumpstart it. And it kind of almost feels like a blockage. And I know for me, when I'm feeling that way, I've had to really shift and change my environment up pretty significantly. Whether that be like spending more time in nature, spending more time in a coffee shop surrounded by people and picking up on that energetic like buzz that exists, or even traveling when able. And that has been really useful for me. But if I'm feeling this disconnected and no longer have the interest and desire, it is hard. You feel like you're disappointing people by backing out of things, but you also have to honor the fact that you probably have an interest-based nervous system, and if the interest isn't there anymore, it's really not going to do you any good to be a part of that project, and it's probably not going to do them any good either. And there are ways to have those conversations without it, leading to complete rupture, but that is also a potential when having these types of conversations because we don't get to decide how other people are going to react to our actions or our needs. And I think that can be really hard, especially for those of us who maybe experience RSD or any other struggle with feeling perceived and just having more sensitive systems. So, I mean, that would be my starting point is just to really get a step back and say, like, is this something that is completely done for me? Or is this something that if I change my environment a little bit, could I access the joy or the excitability again? And if it feels like it's just impossible to obtain, then it's probably worthy of considering backing out from it.
It makes me wonder if it's like too all or nothing here too. Like, can you take a break and then come back at it when you maybe feel more passionate about this particular thing again?
Similarly, you're saying you have a horrible time finishing projects. I wonder if that's the first conversation with your friends, like, "Hey, we're getting closer to the end, and I'm noticing that this is always where it's hard for me. Is there something else I could pitch in on or do for the team that is maybe not the end steps of this project? Do we need something else?" And see if there's a spot they could use your skills that doesn't require you to fully leave, but also doesn't put pressure on you to wrap up a project.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I like this question a lot because I tend to not be great at doing things alone. So almost all the things that I do are with someone. I do the podcast with Cade. I had started the very beginning steps of like writing a book with a friend of mine, which I ultimately actually backed out of. Like I'm much more of a group project kind of person. And part of it is this, like, I'm not great at the endings. I'm not great at the like full follow through of things. If it were just me trying to get a podcast out, I would inevitably like not edit it or like actually take those last couple of steps every time. Those tend to be Cade in our particular dynamic. And so I think it's really important to be able to know, like, if you are going to be doing shit with your friends, make sure that everyone's on the same page about what the expectations are and what, like, okay, here are my strengths. I make the little Canva art things for the episode title, but I'm not going to edit it because I can't listen to my own voice that much. Like, if someday Kate's like, I'm super sick, I can't do it. Okay, fine, I could do it. But like, it's not going to be a consistent thing that I'm capable of. And so recognizing those like capacity limits early is really important if you want to maintain the friendship, especially.
Yeah. I have always approached partnerships as if you are signing up for like a marriage and discussing the likelihood of divorce.
Mm.
Um, because there are just so many factors in business partnerships and creative partnerships in general, and you might be really excited about it at first and lose interest or vice versa, or there might be a rupture in the relationship that causes the inability to continue working together, or just people's lives change, their capacities change, their their priorities change. And I think it's just important to figure out how to separate from those things in a way that feels like it's in a repair state opposed to just letting rupture occur and not trying to figure out why or how to mend that. Um, I remember having Katie Lemieux and Kate Campbell on my podcast. They were the co-founders of the private practice startup, and they talked about like the hours that they poured into their contracts about the inevitability of stepping away from it from the
Mhm.
get-go. And they said that's what led them to feel like they had a successful partnership for almost 15 years together. And
Wow.
I think that's it's just a vantage point that we don't often take because it can feel really messy or really hard to bring up like, what if this doesn't work out? And what does that mean for our friendship or for our business entity or whatever the case may be?
And almost not like what if, but like when. Like
Yeah.
at some point, I'm almost 30, like, Cade, you're in your 30s. Like, this is not going to be something that we're doing 80 years from now. That's just not realistic. It might not even be something we're doing 60 years from now or 10 years from now. Or it's hard to say, but I often try to remember how different my life is from my life 10 years ago and 10 years before that. Like, Cade and I are working on a project with our friend Jamie. And it was on the very first call that we had about it. I think I was driving home from Asheville. And we're sitting there talking about, like, okay, we want to be sure when we're picking a name that if one person wants to step away from this, it doesn't screw the other two when we name it, or that nobody feels frustrated by like you're still using this thing that kind of feels super connected to my particular business. Same thing with like colors and all of the actual practical things. Um, for if one or two people, or, if all three of us, or when all three of us want to be done, setting that up for success is really important. It's a thing that would come really naturally if you were doing business with someone who wasn't your friend. So it needs to also be prioritized when you're doing business with friends.
For sure.
It's tough when it's with friends, and I assume it's similar in a marriage if you're discussing like a prenuptial agreement. No one loves that conversation, but it does give that safety and the security.
Yeah. Certainty.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So hopefully, if you have this conversation before they get towards the end of the project and are going, "Hey, where did you go? Your steps aren't done." That might help save that friendship and prevent some of the potential rupture. But like
I know.
Patrick said, it is a potential and that's hard. Yeah.
I also think that like if I leave, I won't get much time with my friends. They're also busy with the business. Like that's a choice that each one of you makes, just like you make with every other person in your life about how much time you give or don't give. Like, I think it's one of the harder parts about like burnout as a whole is like, at least the times that I've experienced it, it feels like there is never enough time for anything. And like, whatever time does exist, I'm not really willing to give away. I'm very stingy with it, which is super weird for me, but like I end up just like in my own space by myself for a lot of time. That also could have partially been because like when I was in really bad burnout, I lived alone, but doing the effort of reaching out, even as an extrovert, was like something I just couldn't do. And so I think it's somewhat like if you're not quite in burnout yet overall and you're just losing interest in this one project, maybe say like I would still like to see you all, and it's actually making it harder for me to step back when I know I'm no longer helping the project because I'm worried that I won't get to see you. So can we talk about that and work that out?
How do you all stay in touch with friends that you don't work with? Or do you?
Can I curse on this podcast?
Fuck yes.
Okay.
Patrick.
People ask me that on mine all the time, and I'm always like, huh?
I'm almost offended by the question.
Well, I already did, so I was thinking about it anyway. But how do I stay in touch with friends when I'm in burnout? I don't, honestly. Like I have such little capacity. I mean, I okay, let me revise that statement. It's not that I don't. It's just that my capacity is so significantly diminished that the way that I stay in touch is very minimal. And that might mean like someone sends me a text message or a DM, and I really don't have the capacity or energy to respond to it, but I just like, double tap it. I like it. I send a thumbs up as if I'm recognizing that I appreciate it. And when I have the energy, maybe I'll send something back. But the reality is, I think as we move through burnout, you start to have very difficult conversations with people in your life about how you can show up. And I think that the people who get it are going to get it and they're going to stick by you regardless. And they're going to probably check in on you via sending videos of old turtles to your friends.
He was a giant old tortoise. It was really cute.
It was very cute, but it's just like that way of showing people that you're thinking of them or that you care about them without the expectation. And I think that's really hard sometimes in friendship. I have a couple of friends who know me very well, and if I'm feeling like I really need to be social, but I do not have the capacity, I have reached out to them and said like, "Do you want to grab dinner, but not have any expectation that there's going to be a conversation or any sort of talking, or I just need to exist in proximity next to someone." And that person responded very excitedly, like, "Yes, I would love that. I want the same thing." So I think that we often can internalize this in terms of like guilt and shame of how we are showing up in friendship, but it's about finding the right people to surround yourself with, the people who are going to get it, who are not going to feel offended that you have to bail on plans for the 100th time because you just don't have the capacity, or if you go radio silent in conversation. And those can be things that you can tell people in advance that you feel safe enough to do so with. But um, yeah, that's at least my
Yeah.
current style of existing.
I think that also brings up something that I've talked with one of my best friends about for many years is like, I trust her to tell me when something's not gonna work well, like, or when she can't do something, or like you were just talking, Patrick, about like the dinner with a friend where there's no expectation of conversation. I would love to be a person who could offer that. Unless there is someone else there for me to talk to, I can't offer you that. Like, I'm gonna be talking. I don't necessarily need you to say anything back, but like if you don't want to be talked at, that's not something I can offer you. And so like having friends that you can trust to say, "No, I'm not up for that," actually brings a lot of peace, at least to me. Like, I struggle way more with people where I'm like, "You're gonna say yes, and then we're gonna do it, and you're gonna be, like, kinda grouchy, and then we're gonna stop, and then you're gonna kind of resent me for a while for having asked," and it's like, I would much rather a person who can say no, and, like, to this question asker's thing, like, if you're losing excitement, depending on how your friendship is, they might be able to tell. Like, I can usually tell when someone is, like, not excited to do a thing with me, and that's fine. People don't have to be excited to do shit, but, like, at some point, I would want you to just tell me, "I don't wanna be doing this anymore," than, like, dragging me along in this, like, performance, um, and I think that's one of the most important things is, like, having people in your life who you can say, like you were saying, like, "No, I can't come tonight," or whatever, but also who will say that back to you and who will, you know, be honest about their capacities is really important to me.
It's a good important point that like you and I have very different social capacity and social motivation. And like we can exist as friends because we know that about each other. And I know that you really want to be very verbal and have lots of conversation. And I know for me that I am often like, I have to remove myself in a lot of environments where there's a lot of conversation or overwhelm or chatter or background noise or just anything with how sensitive my system is, and not get offended by it by saying like I can't hang out with you, Sabrina, right now because I know you're going to want to talk for hours and I can't do that. I think that's what friendship is though, is being able to have those conversations too, and be able to support each other's needs and really prioritize them when we can.
Yeah, exactly, and, like, I'm a person who feels really big rejection, right? Like, I've got borderline and ADHD, like, the rejection brain is huge for me, and so it was one of the first things that I worked on really intentionally when I wanted to start building healthier relationships was, like, I can't claim that I want friends who will tell me no and then not be a friend who can tell someone no,
Yeah.
or who can take no from a friend. Like, I have to learn how to take that without it being about me. And yeah, I often think about the way in which like our friendship probably works best because we don't live close to each other, right? Because there's not an option for us to be hanging out all the time. And so most of our relationship is me sending you weird animal videos and every once in a while us getting together to bitch about something someone annoying was doing. And
Yeah.
that's really joyful, right? And I think fits really, really well with what we each have to offer. But I do think that, like, it would actually be worse if we lived close by, because there would be a little extra rejection on my end and a little bit probably more pressure on your end, and, like,
Yeah.
that wouldn't feel good.
No. And I think that's an important point for like partnerships and friendships that one person cannot be everything for you.
Yep.
Like, you cannot get all of your needs met from one person. That's just not realistic and it's not fair. Um, my wife is much more extroverted than I am. She is in 2 different book clubs that meets in person all the time. Hip hop dance, she is got a million hobbies, and I am perfectly content being in my house in the dark watching my special interest shows and, like, not doing much. And I think at first when we got married, I didn't know that about myself and vice versa. And I think jealousy can arise and resentment can
Mhm.
arise. And that's even where you can see like control issues arise as well. And working really hard to be like, we are so different. Like we live such different lives. And I think that's why our marriage works the way that it does, is because we really encourage the other to do the things that bring them joy or lack thereof. And without the pressure to put ourselves in positions that are not going to do that. And that took a lot of time to be able to get to a place where I would much rather she go out and do the million things she's going to do. And I would much rather not do any of them and be okay with that. And that also went with like conversations around family gatherings, around like holidays and societal expectations. And having conversations of like, I love your family, but I can't be in a room of 40 people, like all having conversations at the same time. And if I am going to do that, I am going to pay the price. And like, you're going to have to allow me several days afterwards to recover. And it's not a slight, it is more like understanding sensory systems and experiences.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna have you back on like next year or something to talk about marriage because I think that those like really long term pieces get lost. And like my partner and I have been together nowhere near as long as you and your wife have, but we've been living together for like 3 or 4 years now, and we're just starting to come into some of that of like
Yeah.
they're much more introverted than I am, and they also have a hard time with like not being included in things. And so like
Yeah.
I want to be doing something every minute of every day, especially on weekends. I need to be engaging in at least like 3 or 4 different
Yeah.
with other people activities on a weekend, or it doesn't feel like a weekend existed for me. It feels like
Mm,
work happened and then work happened and then work kept happening. And so
right.
like that is a thing that like I think for those long-term relationships doesn't get talked about enough.
I'm chuckling like right now as you're talking because I'm thinking of the story of like the first time that you and your partner came to Asheville to meet some of us and my wife
Mhm.
was there. You want to tell that story real quick? Because I think it's hilarious.
It was okay, so we go to this, like, weird little sports bar, and we're all sitting together,
Hold
so
on.
it's like
Pause. Okay, continue. Yeah, I forgot that we were in that stupid bar. I thought you were
okay.
referencing the pizza spot.
No,
Okay.
I was referencing the weird little
Yeah,
sports
yeah.
bar that we were
Okay.
in. Thank you. It was a
Yep,
weird little
you're
sports
right. You're right.
bar. And we're sat in these, like, big, long benches because that's what's gonna hold all of us. So I work for Patrick, for folks who aren't familiar with that, at Resilient Mind Counseling. And I had just gotten hired, and I've never been to Asheville where RMC is, like, located and where Patrick stays and a bunch of people. And so we're like, cool, we're gonna go to Asheville. For the first time, I'm gonna meet all of my coworkers and stuff. It'll be great. So we show up and we're sat in this like weird bar, and it's like my partner and then me, and then like other coworkers, and Patrick's just like a little bit down, and then there's like way more people. So there's like a bunch of people. And Ariel, Patrick's wife, walks up, just a black lady that like we haven't met, we don't know, and who goes, "Hey, lover," to Patrick, and then like asks a question, and we look at each other, and Asia goes, "Is that one of your coworkers?" And I was like, "No, that's his wife, I'm pretty sure." But yeah, you like introduced her, and I was like, "Okay, cool." But yeah, Asia, my partner, definitely thought that that your wife was like one of my coworkers who just walked up and was like, "Hey, lover,
That
here's
would
some
be
information."
that would be weird.
It would be really bad and would implicate bad things to come for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a laid back work environment that you can just walk up to
Right.
the boss and yeah.
I mean, it is a pretty laid back work environment where people like Sabrina can sell me to fuck off in public and be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna say that to you." And I'm like, "Cool. This is the environment we've created."
One of my favorite Grease photos is flipping you off in that big, like arched, pretty
Mhm.
area where Ariel was taking pictures.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I
Anyway,
think it's
sorry
pretty
for
cool.
diverging on into that route.
And yeah, but I think so. I think that this is kind of to the other person's point, right? Is like it is also worthwhile. Like the job market sucks, but if you can find it, I had 4 jobs within my first, like, 2.5 years after grad school. I did 3 W-2s one year.
Mm.
It was awful, but I worked really hard to not settle and then ended up finding RMC, which has been, like, literally the best place that I could work, which I'm not just saying, but, like, it works really, really well for me, and I hope that I work really, really well for it, like, in terms of what we can offer each other, and so I do think that, like, that is the way that, like, my therapist and I check in often about burnout, and, like, even with all the shit that I'm doing, and there is a lot, I don't feel burnt out even a little bit.
Do you want to
Yeah.
talk about the opposite end of the spectrum?
I was just going to say, why don't we save some burnout discussion for the bonus
Mm,
content? We've got a question around, does autism actually make it harder to be an entrepreneur that we could answer as well? Does that sound good?
that
Yep.
sounds great.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. Yep.
Great. Well, we will head over to our bonus content, Hit Me Again, over on Patreon. Thank you, Patrick, for joining us. If you want to see what Patrick's up to next, you can follow him on Instagram at patrick.casale or allthingspractice.com. You can expect new episodes weekly on Tuesdays. You can find me over at Cryptid Learns and Sabrina at Radical Insights Consulting on Facebook or Instagram, or you can add a .com at the end of either of those for our websites. Please follow the podcast on Facebook or Instagram at Aces Up Your Sleeve Pod. That way you can interact with us and you can see when new episodes release. If you've got any questions for us, you can visit neurokink.org/AUYS and send it to us. Now we're going to jump over to Patreon with Patrick and we're going to record Hit Me Again at patreon.com/Aces Up Your Sleeve Podcast. See you there.